rolling?
We're rolling.
Okay. My name is Dr. Joseph Burkes. I'm a retired internal medicine physician that also has emergency room practice as part of my CV. Back in the 1990s, I was part of a very extraordinary investigation. It was human-initiated contact with extraterrestrial intelligence. We called it the Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind Initiative. It was a program organized by the Center for the Study of Extraterrestrial Intelligence. People in the audience probably have heard of Dr. Stephen Greer. I worked closely with him for 5 years. I can tell you that the techniques of the center were effective. We chose a research site in the Santa Susana Pass. It was between Chatsworth, this is Los Angeles County, between Chatsworth and the Simi Valley. And I was impressed that we got results immediately. As soon as we started doing field work there, we saw golden globes, red orbs. One red orb went up and down beyond the ridgeline to the north, kind of peekaboo. We even had signaling with anomalous nocturnal lights. Two very powerful lights appeared on the ridgeline. They signaled at us, and one of my coworkers suggested, why don't you try a very specific pattern of signaling and see if they will respond. Now, we were using these old-fashioned halogen lead battery-operated very bright lights, but they were very primitive. We called it one of them was called the light bazooka, which was kind of funny, because here we are trying to have peaceful interaction with the ETs, and I'm signaling at them with my bazooka. In any case, it took about 3 seconds, maybe 2, 1/1002, for the light in our signal lanterns to fade out. My coworker suggested, why don't you try this pattern of signaling at these anomalous lights that appeared on the ridgeline? Try this. Flash, then wait 3 seconds, 1/1000, 2/1000, 3/1, flash, flash, then wait 1/1000, 2/1000, 3 more seconds, flash, flash, flash. So I tried it once, and I seemed to get the pattern, and I signaled at the light. And before the light on the ridgeline, before the light in my bazooka faded out, the light on the ridgeline with a strobe responded. It was uncanny. It was so fast. I then waited 3 seconds. Flash, flash from my light bazooka. Again, it took about a second or 2 for the light to fade out. But even before the light faded out, the light on the ridge responded. And then 3 more seconds from me, flash, flash, flash. And again, reply. Well, this was pretty astounding. But even more surprising was that one of the people, her name is Shirley Jones, and we had on my contact team 3 physicians, a 747 pilot from United Airlines. We had a Harvard graduate who had 2 master's degrees, one in film writing. He was a film writer in Hollywood, and then the other one he had a psychology degree. So we had a very powerful team. A lot of medical types. One of the people on the team, Shirley Jones, left early because she had to work as a respiratory therapist the next morning. So what happened was she was driving home in advance of our work. And while we were signaling at the light, she was about 3 miles away driving home in her Astro van. All of a sudden, for no apparent reason, her van starts shaking violently. And she thinks, what did I have, a flat? What happened? Maybe I went over railroad tracks. She stopped the vehicle. She was a single woman, in the Santa Susana Pass area, kind of, mean streets of Los Angeles. You don't get out of your car so quickly. She looked around. It seemed safe. She looked around for railroad tracks. There was no railroad tracks. She looked around for a flat tire. They were fine. But she looked up at the Santa Susana Pass where we were, and one of the lights was signaling directly at her. So one has to raise the question, was this electromagnetic effect that shook the car, allowing her to then see the lights and signal? So this was within the first week of our contact work. For the next 5 years, we had wonderful, amazing encounters in Joshua Tree, which is the high desert, in the Santa Monica Mountains. I traveled with Dr. Greer to the volcanic zone in 1993, where we signaled out a UFO that was at least 100 or 200 feet across.
Is this using the protocols that Dr. Greer has described in his channel with the mantras and the meditations and the...
That's right, but you know what? When it came to the Santa Susana Pass, we may not have attracted the UFOs because the UFOs were already there. And I say that because there's a long history of UFOs being involved in nuclear facilities.
Right.
If you read Robert Hastings' book, which I encourage the audience to do, it's called UFOs and Nukes. He describes dozens of encounters of UFOs at strategic air command bases, missile bases, even nuclear power plants and nuclear weapon storage facilities. In fact, one of the most famous of which is the Rendlesham Forest case, which involved a laser-like beam being sent down from a UFO at these bunkers that were storing nuclear weapons. So what we didn't know when we were working the Santa Susana Pass was that the Department of Energy had a base there, and they had had a nuclear accident some 3 decades before, back in the 1950s.
Okay.
It was a partial release of, well, it was a partial meltdown. It was a release of plutonium into the environment. There was also rumored to be Star Wars weaponry being developed at that base, and everybody in the San Fernando Valley who lived there in the 1960s used to see how at the Department of Energy site the space shuttle engines were tested, and the blasts of rocket fume shot out from the engines that you could see across the whole San Fernando Valley. So it is my belief that the UFOs were already there when we got there. Now this message was hammered home quite significantly in 2006 when I was working in the emergency room. It was a slow day, and the retired engineer who worked at the Santa Susana Department of Energy site was being admitted to the hospital. So it was a slow day, so I asked him, where he worked, and he said, his job was maintaining the base. They had to make sure the water supply, which came from these enormous towers at the top of the base and went down the mountain, both underground, because the base had about 20 levels underground, as well as a vast area on the surface. Well, they had to monitor the water supply because in the past there had been a partial meltdown of a nuclear reactor. Who knows what other important labs needed water. So the alarms went off back in 1990, 2 years before I got there to do the CE5, the human-initiated contact experience work. And the alarms went off indicating that there was a loss of water in one of these big pipes. So being the maintenance engineer, he knew what to do. He grabbed his machete, his coworker grabbed a weed whacker, and then they followed these large transite pipes that went down the mountainside carrying water to the various parts of the base. That was a treacherous job because there's rattlesnakes there, cactuses, and what happened was periodically there were landslides or rock slides that occasionally broke the pipes. So what they expected to find was a landslide and maybe some broken pipes from that. They went down and they got to a clearing and they found the source of the break, but it was not what they expected. In the clearing, the pipe had a jet of water shooting up into the air like a geyser. And when they examined the pipe, what they found was that it had been cut out with smooth edges. A section of the pipe had been removed. It wasn't the kind of jagged edges that would happen from a break from a rock front. And as they looked around and thinking, who the hell did this? Because it looked like a power precision cutting tool had cut out the section of the pipe. Less than 200 feet away in the clearing, they see a metallic disc spinning silently. My gosh, they were shocked. They got on the squawk box and talked to security. And these guys were armed with M16s, and the security people said, this is kind of funny, whatever you do, don't approach the UFO. Well, that was the last thing he and his coworker wanted to do. So they were standing there kind of dumbfounded, the water shooting up in the air.
Well, Travis Walton can tell them all about not approaching UFOs.
That's exactly right, a very good point. So what happened was, before the security guys could get there, the UFO turned on its side, pointing upward, and with a blast and a roar, it shot off at tremendous speed.
Wow. Wow.
So
usually they're silent. You hear the stories. They're usually, you can't hear them. They're silent. You're saying
this time they did, which was unusual. Yeah. I think they are able to use a wide range of technology.
Interesting.
In any case, in 2006, I realized that the UFOs probably were at that base for a very long time, monitoring the plutonium that was released in the atmosphere, monitoring whatever Star Wars technology that might be developed there, because Star Wars technology, which was meant to shoot down missiles, probably could be used to shoot down UFOs too. And so maybe what that act of apparent sabotage was payback for attacks that the United States and other nations have carried out against UFOs. In any case, this is speculation. But for the 5 years from 1992 until 1997, I was an active participant in the CE5 initiative, Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind. I prefer the term HICE, Human-Initiated Contact Experience, because the term explains exactly what we're doing, rather than having to explain to people, well, there's this scientific protocol developed by Dr. Hynek and Dr. Jacques Vallée, and then you have to go through a close encounter, the first, second. With the designation Human-Initiated Contact Experience, you tell the person what it is. Also, there are people that are doing contact work who have no exposure to scientific literature, and it's good to use a term that's that case. Also, there are groups that are doing human-initiated contact experiences years before Dr. Greer got his organization started in 1990, and I got a chance to do field work with Peruvian contactees and from Mission Rahama.
Yes, you've written about that on Facebook as well.
That's right, I have. And I was able to do field work with Mission Rahama, and they got started in 1974, 16 years before Dr. Greer, doing something very similar, thought projection, going to places where there are UFOs. And like Dr. Greer, who recalls having onboard experiences, all the top people in Mission Rahama, some of them in mass, have gone on board UFOs. And so I got to do field work with them. Quite an exciting experience.
Right. I remember Paola Harris had, in the last year or so, had gone to Mount Shasta and had been invited by Mission Rahama to go there, and she was selected, I guess, somehow.
Right, she saw a being there as well.
Right. But she chose not to go through the portal.
It's called a Xendras. Now I can tell you about Xendras because I got a chance to experience it in Mount Shasta. They told me don't have any expectations because if you do, it might interfere with the experience. They gave me good results. Unfortunately, I had lots of expectations, and the reason why is that not only did I know about the dimensional portal that Sixto Paz Wells reported on when he, in 1974, went as part of Mission Rahama, and he allegedly was teleported to a Jovian moon called Ganymede. That's our term. The so-called aliens called it Moreland. So
Moreland?
Moreland. That's what they told Sixto and his friends. And there he was able to meet with several groups of ETs. At least he had memories of it, as well as several other people on Rama went through the portal and ended up at this place.
Interesting.
But one of the people on my contact team from the early 1990s, who I hope is at the meeting today, his name is Captain Joe Vallejo. He is now retired from United. He was a 747 pilot, and it was really great. On my contact team, not only did we have 3 physicians, a Harvard graduate, we had a PhD clinical psychologist, and a 747 pilot for United. So Joe Vallejo, who was from Cuba originally, served as liaison between our network of English-speaking contact workers and the Spanish-speaking contact workers in Mission Rahama. And in 1994, he was invited to go to Shasta, and he experienced the Xendra, and he got to go in one. And the story that he told, and it's not only Captain Vallejo who experienced the entrance into the zone. In fact, 48 other people were with him, and in groups of 7, they got to experience the dimensional portal. And what happened, and this is very curious, they were meditating, and meditation does improve telepathic communication, and they were meditating, saying the word Om, Om, and what they saw in the field next to them, Mount Shasta in the distance, was a purple light appeared about 10 feet off the ground. It hovered there, and then out of that purple light, a doorway formed by an extension of the light, and then a small structure seemed to be appearing as well. This was the Xendra, the dimensional portal. Then, in groups of 7, while the rest were chanting, they went into the portal, and they got to experience what it was like. Unfortunately, Joe Vallejo's group of 7 was the last group to go in. And what happened is they entered the portal, and immediately they noted that there was a distortion of time-space. When they spoke, their words sounded very muffled, as if they were like underwater. And so the vibrational frequency of that Xendras space was very different from our space-time. And something unpleasant happened because while they were inside the portal, the other group outside that were chanting Om were getting pretty tired. It was now like almost an hour for all the groups to go in. And as they got tired saying Om, Om, the Xendra started to collapse with them inside. It was a very tight space, like an elevator, and the walls seemed to be moving in on them. So they did not want to experience what happens in a Xendra when it collapses. So the people inside the portal, Joe's team of 7, starts chanting with vigor, Om, 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 and the portal is reforming as they're doing that, and they were able to get out of it and safely have the experience.
Wow.
So I knew all this when I went to have my Xendra experience, and I was thinking, okay, I want the purple light to appear, and then I want to be able to go in, and maybe I'll get teleported. All I experienced was there was a distortion of the sound, the vibration of the air, its ability to transmit sound was altered because there was a stream that was not very vigorous. You could just barely hear it. And then as the portal experience unfolded, the air transmitted the sound of the stream very, very efficiently so that it sounded like a river. It was this little shh, and all of a sudden the sound from the stream is much louder. And also I felt the force pulling me forward. But I did not see the purple light, and they had warned me, don't have expectations because it might interfere with your Xendra experience. In any case, this was the kind of work I did for 5 years, working with Center for the Study of Extraterrestrials. Then afterwards I did field work with Rahama. Also I hooked up with a bunch of what you would call freelancers or independents. And many of them had contact experiences that were even far more profound than anything we experienced within our network. So I got to meet some of these amazing contactees who described onboard experiences that came as a result of their doing field work, but they were not part of any network. In fact, I suspect they were told by the ETs, you guys are top-notch, but you better fly under the radar. We don't want any national security or CIA types to scope you while we're having our meetings. In any case, these people were instructed to not publicize their work, but fortunately, through a series of synchronous events, I got to meet them and hear their stories, although I only did field work with 1 or 2 of them. Let's go back to the Santa Susana Pass in 1992. Yeah. I've established that the UFOs that were interacting with us there probably were not drawn there because they were there already. I mentioned what happened to the maintenance engineer and the release of plutonium, as well as the base being used probably to develop Star Wars technology. These are rumors, secret, I can't confirm it. But in any case, the intelligence behind the phenomena showed us that they had recognized our contact work, not only in signaling at the ridgeline, but in a series of amazing contact sightings. 3 people on my team during the first month of our investigations had highly congruent sightings of UFOs that confirmed the intelligence recognized our work. My sighting was the first. Now these happened not during field work, but at different times while each of us were driving home alone in our own personal vehicles under highly congruent circumstances. We even were heading the same direction. We're all going south when these sightings occurred. So the first happened on September 1, 1992. I was doing field work for about a week at that time. And I had attended a UFO meeting in the San Fernando Valley. For people who don't know Los Angeles, to get from the San Fernando Valley to West Los Angeles, you have to go through the Sepulveda Pass. And as I'm driving through this pass, and I come up out on the Los Angeles basin, I see an anomalous blue-green light, and it's moving north, opposite the direction that I'm headed. It's about 600 or 700 feet up, and it's going only about 15, 20 miles an hour. And it's moving in a kind of serpiginous sine wave type of pattern, going up and down, up and down. Now in Los Angeles, because of the marine layer that pours in from the ocean, the lights from the city go up to the marine layer and then are reflected back down towards the ground. So if you're on the ground and you look up at any conventional craft, you're going to see the silhouette because the light's coming from above. You're going to see a darkened silhouette, whether it be a small plane or a helicopter. This anomalous nocturnal light had no silhouette. It was just a blue-green light. So I got home and I told my wife there's good news and there's bad news. Good news is they just had a UFO sighting. The bad news is that I made some enemies at that UFO meeting and they probably are never going to invite me back again. So that was sighting number 1 of 3 highly congruent sightings that happened during the first month of our contact work. The second sighting was even more dramatic. I can now use her real name. There were 3 physicians on our team, Dr. Burkes. We were partners in the Permanente Medical Group, Southern California Permanente. One of the field investigators was Dave Gordon, Dr. Gordon, a family practitioner. His wife, Eve Gordon, was not terribly interested in the subject. He was the guy who was gung-ho. She sort of tolerated it. On the 23rd of September, 3 weeks after my encounter, broad daylight, she's driving through Warner Center, which is an industrial park with good views on the main boulevard, I think it might have been Topanga Canyon, of the Santa Monica Mountains. As she's driving south towards the Santa Monica Mountains, glistening in the sun, she sees a 30-foot metallic disc. And she was a skilled observer, not because she had double boarded in internal medicine and immunology, which made her a reliable witness in many cases. She got a professional job and very responsible. But she was a skilled observer because her husband, Dr. Gordon, was a private pilot, and she used to drag Eve to all the aircraft shows, plane shows. And so she learned to identify all kinds of conventional craft as a result of her husband's being a private pilot. So she knew that that metallic disc was not the Goodyear blimp, it was not the planet Venus, it was not, shall we say, a mirage, it was a metallic disc. That was sighting number 2. The third one was more dramatic. It happened on September 24th, 1992. Dotha Wayburn was the senior member of our team, 65 years young, and she lived in a very fancy house on the Palos Verdes Peninsula. On a spectacular cliff looking out over the Pacific Ocean, they had a very stately home. And one night, around 9 p.m., she's driving home from a meditation seminar, and we use meditation as part of our contact program. And she's driving up this long driveway going up towards her home on the cliff. As she's going up the driveway, she sees a light above her house that she's never seen before. And as she's going up the driveway, getting closer, the light starts flying down towards her. And as it approaches, she realizes it's a 25-foot sphere, luminescent, glowing, mother-of-pearl UFO. And as it flies over her vehicle, she gets a telepathic communication. You were looking for us. Well, here we are. So the intelligence behind the phenomena recognized the contact work, and I don't believe that they put transponders on our vehicles to track us. I believe their psychic ability is so powerful that they were able to recognize who we were, our mission, and were able to stage these high strangeness encounters that were highly congruent, each of us driving home alone in our own cars. We had made contact, and they proved it by staging these encounters. Now, that wasn't a message just for my team. I believe that was a message for the entire contact network, which I call the Contact Underground. And if you're interested in learning more about that, this was a 2012 book, Paths to Contact, True Stories of the Contact Underground. It was edited by Jeff Becker, and I have 50 pages in it, which I urge your viewing audience to read. And it's a compendium of all the people that were part of our CE5 Human-Initiated Contact Experience Network. Now, what I'm doing these days is something a little different. I'm approaching my 8th decade of life, and it gets challenging to go on top of a mountain top in a storm or a 30-degree temperature with wind and rain and all the things that we did when I was younger Dr. Burkes. So I'm now getting into documenting cases of medical healings. And my friend Ray Hernandez, along with the famous Dr. Edgar Mitchell, who founded the organization FREE, which stands for Foundation for Research into ET and Extraordinary Experiences. That organization, FREE, carried out an extensive survey of contact experiencers. They called it the Free Experiencer Research Study. And these 4,000 people were asked to describe in detail their contact experiences, and we asked them to report only encounters that they could remember without the benefit or perhaps hindrance of hypnosis. And the results that they got were really quite extraordinary. One of the surprising details was that the overwhelming majority of people who responded, and by the way, there was over 400 questions, and it was a very detailed study. One of the themes that emerged was that the overwhelming majority of people thought they had positive contact experiences or neutral. They were asked, how would you characterize your contacts? Good, bad, or neutral? 66% of the people who responded said it was good. 29% said it was neutral. Only 5% responded that it was a terrible experience. Now, they asked this question 40 times in different ways, so they could substantiate this was not or just a fluke. And these results were consistent. They asked the contact experiencers, would you stop these contacts if you could? 16% said yes, we would like them to stop. But 84% said no, we want them to continue. And if you watch X-Files or read the alien abduction literature, you'd be surprised by the answer to the next question. They asked them to characterize the ETs, and they said, are the ETs evil or malevolent? 91% said no. Only 9% of the responders said the contact experiences are negative. Well, this is totally opposite of what people would believe if they watch the tabloids or the alien invasion movies that are non-stop happening. So this is an important message, and that message was written up in the book Beyond UFOs, The Science of Consciousness and Contact with Non-Human Intelligence. What this 820-page book documents is the responses of the contact experiencers. This is Beyond UFOs, The Science of Contact and Consciousness, the Science of Consciousness and Contact with Non-Human Intelligence. Now, the other book that I mentioned, Path to Contact, the first 50 pages are I wrote about my contact work back in the 90s. But in this book, we had a chapter on medical healings. And one of the questions that the responders to the questionnaire were asked was, have you or anyone in your family ever had a healing as a result of contact with non-human intelligence associated with the UFO phenomenon? Of the 1,500 people who answered that question, 750 said yes, they had had some medical healing as a result of their contact with the so-called aliens. Well, Preston Dennett, who is a prominent UFO investigator and author, has written almost 20 books on the subject of UFOs, and he also, by the way, was in my contact team back in the 90s. It was good to have a guy who was as knowledgeable as Preston on your team. In any case, he and I co-authored a chapter, Chapter 6, from Beyond UFOs, and what we did was we took the 10 best cases of medical healings, and they were truly astounding. And if we have time, I might tell you and the viewing audience about what those cases were.